When you think about taking a cruise, Galveston is probably not the first thing that pops into your mind. You probably think Florida. But let me tell you, this Texas gem is not just growing fast, it's becoming one of the best launch points for a Western Caribbean adventure, if you know how to navigate it the right way. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. And today I'm gonna walk you through everything you need to know about cruising out of Galveston. I just got back from a Galveston cruise. I hadn't been in a couple of years, so I'm ready to talk all about it. And trust me, you're gonna wanna stick around because later on, I'm gonna share with you the #1 mistake I see people make when cruising from Galveston and give you my favorite tips on how to avoid it. Now, first things first, let's talk about where exactly Galveston is. I actually cruised with my boyfriend. He had never been to Galveston. He'd actually only ever had a layover in Texas. And when I was showing him the map of getting from Houston to Galveston, he was very shocked. He had no idea Texas was so huge, that Galveston was so far from Houston, but it is. Galveston Island is an island, and it's about an hour, if not more, drive south of Houston. And again, that's on a good day. If you're flying in like a lot of cruisers, you'll land at either Houston Hobby Airport or George Bush Intercontinental. Hobby tends to be cheaper, but for me, I don't have a lot of flights out of Cincinnati to Hobby, so I usually fly into IAH, which is George Bush Intercontinental. Now, if you do have good flights to Hobby and they're cheaper and affordable, Hobby is closer. It's only about 41 miles, but even then, depending on Houston traffic, it can still be a long and sometimes frustrating drive. And that's where a lot of first-time visitors to Galveston, they go wrong. They assume they can fly in the morning of their cruise and make it down to the port in time. And of course you can do that. I do sometimes do that. I actually have a guide in the comments I'll drop where I talk about the pros and cons of flying in the night before versus the day of. I will tell you, flying in the day of to any cruise port destination is a big risk. It is very stressful, but it can be done, but just be smart about it. But when it comes to Galveston, it's a little trickier because not only is the distance pretty far, but there's often construction, there are often traffic issues, and it can just take one highway closure to delay you for hours and mean that you miss the ship. So I always recommend folks that are flying in to try to get a hotel in Galveston. And in a moment, I'll give you my top recommendations. It's much more relaxing to wake up in Galveston. Galveston is lovely. It feels like a little town to leisurely have breakfast, to stroll over and look at the cruise ships because everything is pretty small and pretty well contained instead of white knuckling it down Interstate 45 on the same day, praying that you're gonna make your boarding time. Now, if you do decide to stay overnight in Galveston proper, there are some really solid hotel options. I will tell you they are expensive. As I mentioned, I just took a cruise out of Galveston, and while I personally prefer to stay in Galveston, I checked out all these hotels and everything else. For my dates, the price difference was astronomical between Galveston and Houston. So I did spend the night in Houston. I also have a friend there I wanted to catch up with. So sometimes it makes sense to stay in Houston, but if you can and if budget allows, I recommend staying in Galveston. One of my favorites is Holiday Inn Resort Galveston on the beach. What's great about this is it's right on the seawall. So it's close to the action, you have ocean views, they have a heated outdoor pool, but if you want something a little more historic, you can stay downtown at the Tremont House. What's great about Tremont House is it's just 2 blocks from the cruise terminals. You could literally walk there, saving on transportation at least, to the terminal on the day of your embarkation. Plus, Tremont is super charming and it's located right in the heart of the center of Galveston where everything happens, which is the Strand. This is Galveston's gorgeous historic district. Now, if you want something boutique, the Harbor House at Pier 21, that's a great option. You'll literally be right on the harbor, close enough that if you pack light, again, you could even walk to the port without much trouble. Now, if you're gonna be driving to the port, parking here is pretty easy. The Port of Galveston runs secure parking lots and garages. They patrol them around the clock, and you can even save some money by booking online ahead of time. Whether you're sailing out of terminals 25 or 28, where Carnival, Norwegian, and MSC typically dock, or from Royal Caribbean's shiny new Terminal 10, which by the way, I hear is phenomenal. Never been to that one, but I can tell you 25 and 28 aren't that great, but apparently Terminal 10 is great. But if you're sailing Royal Caribbean, Terminal 10 parking is very clearly marked and their shuttle services are pretty easy to navigate. But let's talk about something a lot of people don't expect when cruising from Galveston, the alcohol rules. I know this, I literally wrote it in my Galveston port guide, which by the way, I'll drop in the comments below. It's all this and more in written form, but I actually had forgotten about this completely. I had free drinks on us throughout the ship with Carnival for me and my boyfriend because I sail on a casino offer. I'll also drop information about how to get free casino cruises there as well. And on our first day, we went to the coffee shop, Java Blue, which is our tradition, and got our coffee, and they charged us for it. And I said, oh, no, I have free drinks everywhere. And they said, not on the first day, you don't. And that was a non-alcoholic drink. So thanks to Texas laws, if you're sailing Carnival, your drink package, and again, in our case, not even alcohol drinks, they likely won't kick in until the ship reaches international waters. Royal Caribbean, on the other hand, they have some kind of special licensing arrangement with the Texas government, so they do offer drink service right away, but it's a more limited menu that you're gonna find compared to once you're out to sea. And on top of that, when you come back to Galveston at the end of your cruise, any duty-free alcohol purchases will be taxed by the state of Texas. So it's just one of those quirks of cruising from Texas that's good to know ahead of time. There are some other ports that have some weird rules about drink packages and when they start and taxation and things like that. But if you're used to sailing from Florida ports, like a lot of cruisers are, including me, you might get caught by surprise. Oh, and if you're driving down from Houston, make sure, little side tip, that you budget a little extra time for a stop at Buc-ee's in Texas City. If you've never been to a Buc-ee's, imagine a gas station crossed with Disneyland with like 100 gas pumps. Their bathrooms are actually exceptionally clean. They're known for legendary clean bathrooms, and a lot of them, their snacks are next level. They're always going viral on social media for being a great place to stop. And it's kind of a rite of passage for anyone that is visiting Galveston. So you're gonna be driving by there anyway, so if you have time, make a stop if you can, especially if you've never been to a Buc-ee's, because it's a pretty cool experience. And you can pick up some snacks to bring with you on the ship. Just make sure you keep everything in their original packages, and if you buy beverages, you follow the cruise line specific rules about what's allowed to be brought on board and what's not. Now, before we jump into where you might head once you sail away, here's a quick reminder about getting around Galveston itself. Public transportation here is basically non-existent. It's not like Florida where you've got the Bright Line. There's really no public way to get from Houston to Galveston. So to get to and from the cruise port, you're going to have to use an Uber, which can get expensive, especially when that surge pricing hits on the way back after your cruise. Book a private transfer or work with the cruise line to book a cruise line transfer. So you do want to think about transportation in advance. Now, sometimes people want to rent a car. I actually did this kind of on my cruise recently out of Galveston. I wanted the freedom because I did stay in Houston. I wanted to drive around Houston and then drop the rental car off in Galveston and then just board the ship. I was surprised to learn that there actually is only one rental car company with a drop-off location in Galveston proper. So I ended up booking with a car company, and that one was sold out because there aren't many options. So I ended up booking with a different car company, and I had to drop it off in Lamarck, which is about 14 miles away from Galveston, and then I just Ubered from there. So renting a car can get a little complex and hairy too, but make sure if you're flying into Houston to get to Galveston that you do think about your transportation options because it can be a little trickier than some other cruise port destinations. All right, so once you're finally in Galveston, maybe you spent the night, you drove down, you took an Uber, whatever, you're ready to go, you're waving goodbye to Galveston Island. Where are you actually headed? Most cruises out of Galveston do a Western Caribbean itinerary. That means there's a high chance that you'll hit ports like Cozumel, Costa Maya, Roatan, Belize City, and possibly even Progreso, although that's a little lesser visited cruise port, which is a good thing because Progreso is probably my least favorite cruise port of all time. But first, let's start with the good. Cozumel. Cozumel is one of my favorites. It's a cruiser's dream port. I have a whole port guide. I'll link it down below. I have a ton of videos about it. Just search my channel for Cozumel. But I'll tell you what I love about it. It's a super easy, tourist-friendly, American-friendly, just generally friendly cruise port, and it's packed with a ton of things to do. Taxis are plentiful, prices are fixed, they're not very expensive, US dollars are accepted almost everywhere, so you don't have to convert your currency, and if you love a beach day, this is your spot. Cozumel is known for its all-inclusive beach clubs. The most popular ones here include Paradise Beach, Mr. Sancho's, Nachi Kokum. I recently have fallen in love with Iberostar, and there's also Shankanab. I actually went there on my first ever visit to Cozumel. It's a little bit different. It's not your traditional all-inclusive. It's more of like a theme park kind of place. But regardless of where you go in Cozumel, all of these locales are fantastic. Now, there aren't any free beaches that are just accessible. So if you do want a beach day here, you are gonna pretty much have to spring for one of those resort day passes. But given for what you get for it, the all-inclusive aspect of it, it's actually a really good deal. And again, I'll drop my free port guide for Cozumel down below where I give you in-depth information about all of the beach club options and other things to do there. It's not just a beach day. Next up is Costa Maya. Costa Maya is also in Mexico in a similar region, but it feels very different. It's newer, it's smaller, and the terminal area itself is very new and theme parkish, but once you exit that terminal, it's very rustic. But I really like Costa Maya. It has its own charm. Right at the port, there's a lot to do. They have saltwater pools that you can access for free-ish. You have to buy food and beverage, but it's reasonable. They have flamingos. They have an aviary where you can walk and see birds. That costs money. They have Mayan bath rituals. Cost money. They have dolphin encounters. Cost money. Are you catching a theme here? There's a lot you can do at the terminal, but it's going to cost you at least most of it. Now, if you want something more authentic, because I would not say that the Costa Maya cruise terminal, as great as that is exactly cultural immersion, you probably want to exit the maze-like terminal. It's easy to get lost in there. Exit out, find a taxi. There's a taxi stand right there. It's very organized. It's very well regulated. It's very safe. And take a taxi to Mahahul. That's where you'll find all of the beachfront bars and restaurants lining the Malecon. And that's just a long boardwalk. That's where everything pretty much is. You can just walk up and down, enjoy the beach views. You can grab a margarita. You can get a cheap, amazing beach massage. You can shop for souvenirs. Or you can do my favorite thing in Costa Maya, which is to spring for a private beach day pass. My top pick is Nacional. They actually worked with me to give my friends an exclusive 5% discount. I'll drop information below along with my Costa Maya port guide. Go to their website, book direct, use code ProfMelissa to save 5%. It's not cheap, but in my opinion, it's worth it. It's all inclusive, including breakfast, smoothies, alcohol, beverages, you name it. You're guaranteed a private lounger, and it's so much more of a pleasant experience than the other options in Costa Maya, at least in my opinion. Now, just a heads up though, there are a couple of things you should know about Costa Maya. Again, this is quite a bit different than Cozumel. US dollars might not be accepted everywhere you go, especially if you venture out into the town area. You also have to be careful if you have US currency that it's not written on, ripped, or torn, or damaged in any way, because sometimes vendors won't accept that. You also will not find English fluency here, even amongst taxi drivers like you will in Cozumel. So if you hablamos poquito español, that's a nice perk, but if not, you can still usually manage to get around. Because most of the taxi drivers, they're taking people to and from the same places all day, every day, you're gonna be fine. Another port of call common in Western Caribbean itineraries from Galveston is Roatan. This is located in Honduras. Roatan is stunning. It's lush, it's tropical, it feels a little more off the beaten path, less touristy, I guess you could say, at least in the out of the terminal areas. Now, if you take a cruise to Roatan, there are two main cruise ports. There's Cozumel and there is Mahogany Bay, which is actually being renamed by Carnival because that's where they dock. If you dock at Mahogany Bay, which is what it's called now, you can literally just walk to the private beach right from the cruise ship. It's great for a free beach day. But Roatan is worth exploring from the port. And if you're docking at Cozumel, there's really not much walkable from the cruise port. Definitely not a nice beach. Now, some of my favorite memories from Roatan involve hiring my private driver. I do have a great private driver in Roatan. I've never been able to find any in Mexico because of the way the taxis work. But Roatan, I got an amazing private driver. He takes me to all the same spots in Roatan that all of the cruise line excursions go. And he does it usually for about the same price, maybe a little bit more, but it's a very private and exclusive experience. I've done the eco parks where you get to meet sloths and monkeys. I have been snorkeling at West Bay Beach. He's taken me to Little French Key, which is another gem. And he's taken me to rum tastings, chocolate tastings. And the great thing about having my own private driver at my disposal is he'll take me where I want to go. I can stay for as long, as short as I want, and then I head out. If I do a beach day, I can keep my stuff secure in his car while I enjoy the beach, and then I just get to come back. So I definitely recommend a private driver in Roatan. But if you're docking at Carnival's Pier and you want a beach day, there's a great free option there. Again, like all of these other locations I'm talking about, I'll drop my free Roatan port guide down below so you can get all of the insider tips. Also on the Western Caribbean itinerary, that is a frequent stop, not as common as the others, but it's there, is Belize City. Now, full disclosure, this is not my favorite cruise port. It's one of my least favorites next to Progreso, which happens to also be Western Caribbean, but every cruise port is great. Another thing you should know about Belize is that it is a tender port. I don't like tender ports personally because it takes up time and it's just a hassle. So if you're not familiar with tender ports, that means that the ship, for whatever reason, usually shallow waters or other reasons, can't actually drop passengers off on a pier at shore. So they'll anchor offshore, they'll send cruise passengers on a smaller boat to the port area. So it's not a huge deal, but it does add some extra time getting on and off the ship. Now, Belize is very rustic. If you visit here, I highly recommend an excursion. I'm usually not an excursion person. I'm usually an independent private driver, never do a cruise line excursion. But if you visit Belize, this is one where I do think you should do a cruise line excursion. There are some great rustic adventures, things like cave tubing, visiting Mayan ruins, or heading out to snorkel. And if you do want a beach day, there is Goff's Cay, which is a tiny island paradise that is a short boat ride away. Although full disclosure, I don't think Belize is the best place for a beach day. There are other spots that are better for that. But if you love beaches, there are options here as well. And finally, Progreso, Mexico. Progreso is kind of the wild card. It's definitely way less commercialized than Cozumel and Costa Maya. And honestly, a lot of cruisers don't love it. I don't love it. As I mentioned, it's one of my least favorite, if not least favorite cruise ports out there. My least favorites are Progreso, Belize, and Freeport in the Bahamas. But if you're looking for authenticity, you are gonna find it here. This isn't your post up at Senior Frogs and drink beers and everybody speaks English and everyone takes US dollars. It's much more rustic, but it's much more authentic. So if you really do want to get a sense of what it's like living in Mexico or what Mexican culture is like, you can find it here, where that's a little harder to find in other Mexican destinations like Cozumel and Costa Maya. You can still absolutely have a wonderful day here. They do generally offer a free shuttle into town. That's worth doing. Or you can hit the Malecon there, which is their beach promenade. And as I mentioned, there are some great excursions that are options as well. So I want to know, have you ever cruised from Galveston? If you live in and around Texas, probably so. But I want to know what you think about this cruise port destination. I like Galveston. I find the cruisers there to be much friendlier than other cruise port destinations. I don't love that drive from Houston to Galveston, and the terminal's a little bit smaller, but Galveston definitely has its charms. And if you can spring for a hotel in Galveston and enjoy a night there before, that's an experience in and of it itself. And now, as promised, I can't leave without telling you the biggest rookie mistake that I see people make. And that is waiting to the last minute when they get off their cruise to get transportation back to the airports in Houston, assuming that you're flying. As I mentioned, transportation here is a little challenging compared to other cruise port destinations, and I've heard a lot of horror stories from cruisers who got hit with surge pricing because there are fewer options, and they paid several $100s to get from the cruise port to either of the Houston airports. Or even worse, they had significant delays and had Ubers continue to cancel. And as I mentioned, you can't just bop over and rent a car because there's really only one rental car option here, and they're usually sold out. So I strongly recommend in Galveston to pre-book an Uber or book a transfer service. I'm not a big fan of cruise line excursions. I generally don't do them, but this is one where it might be worth it because getting back after your cruise can be a little bit of a struggle. So you don't want to stress yourself out, especially after you just had a wonderful vacation, probably to the Western Caribbean, which is a beautiful region of the world to visit. So I hope you find this information helpful. Again, I have a ton of resources. Just check it out, links in the bottom. And until next time, happy sailing.